So we're going to talk about AI, we're going to talk about infrastructure, we're going to talk about cities, obviously. But maybe the best thing to do, just to start us off, because you have such an interesting background with an international perspective, a finance perspective, and just give us a little bit about your background and your experience.
Sure. So I started my sort of career in infrastructure and investment banking, answering the question, how do we fund our infrastructure, right? How do we pay for it? Then figured that one out, sort of. Moved on to, well, what is the infrastructure we need, right? So started engaging from the investor side, from the developer side, helping to build some of that infrastructure. And then moved into sort of what is the next infrastructure that we need, which is a lot of this sort of the digital infrastructure, which is somewhat, we've heard a lot about AI today, about machine learning, and that sort of technology connectivity. So just sort of moved on all facets of infrastructure procurement and development, design, and thinking about what is the future of our infrastructure, which is very much the basis of how our cities function and how our cities are formed.
I feel like we're at this inflection point. People always say that, but I mean, we've got a large amount of money coming out of the IRA, some of which is dedicated to infrastructure improvements. And then we've got this transformation that's coming after COVID, shifting population patterns. And then there's still this digital revolution that we're in the middle of, which is now being augmented with AI. How do you see from a top level, is this an opportunity for cities, a challenge? Like, how do you think it nets out?
Yeah, so let me break that down a little bit. I think first is, defining what is infrastructure. I think the definition of that, I've noticed, has slowly changed over the decades, right? So infrastructure is less so about the physical asset. It's less so about the road, the bridge, the water plant. It's really about the services that cities provide, right? So it's not just access to the internet, but reliable, affordable, and high-speed internet, right? Or it's not just about access to water, but it's about potable and clean water, right? So it's about the services we provide. I think when we think about it from a service perspective, we start to engage all of our stakeholders, and we're really responding to the needs of the communities. So then you think about, okay, well, what is that service? I think that service is connectivity, right? And when we look at some of the major movements at the federal level, especially the infrastructure bill, that is a large amount, right? So that's something that's never happened in history. But what feds are signaling is breaking down silos. So this is the first time in my career that there's been an infrastructure bill. It is usually a transportation bill, a water bill, or an energy bill. They want us to think in a more comprehensive way about how all these pieces and parts are connected, right? And there's a lot of opportunity in there for cities to really leverage those funds, and pushing a lot of creativity and innovation in how we leverage those funds. I think you brought up the IRA. I think there is a significant opportunity in there. It creates a marketplace to commercialize some of this technology and some of this innovation for cities. So, I've seen a lot of cities come together to form tech hubs, areas and spaces where you can commercialize sort of that startup, that sort of incubation.
I think we've moved the term smart cities as we're programming a lot. Most people don't want to use that term anymore. And I think part of the problem is that it was smart cities for its own sake. It was like, we have this technology, we can deploy it. And now we've moved on to, like every other business, we have a business that we need to operate, and cities need to take care of and provide services to their citizens. Now let's use some technology to enable it. And it's that second tier that actually makes an impact on people's lives. Do you, in your experience, do you have examples of cities that have built these innovation hubs and how they've gone about attracting that type of innovation?
So I think, to your comment earlier, I think smart cities is a funny term because it suggests there's a dumb city, but really there isn't.
I could give you a couple of names.
There's many roles that cities can take. Look, there's Singapore, right? They have an entire digital twin of their city where they're able to capture demand, optimize energy, lower cost of infrastructure, whether it be energy, telecommunications for their populations.
Maybe
right?
I mean, the idea of a digital twin, I think a lot of people have heard it. I don't think a lot of people really understand how it works and how it makes things more efficient. Could you just explain how it works?
So I think in the simplest form, a digital twin is a virtual reality that is dynamic of your city or your infrastructure, right? And it allows you to superimpose what a future would look like. It allows you to run a bunch of scenarios. It allows you to quantify, predict. It allows you to layer different pieces of data on top of it. I think it's really driving at that sort of data-driven decision-making that's fast, can be very acute. So that's really what, a digital twin is.
And also, it's a collection of all this data, and some of that data could be provided by the city, some of it could be provided by private companies.
Yeah.
And you've got some good examples of cities, I think in South Korea, who, in Seoul, where they've really leaned into this and said, let's work with businesses, let's share data. Talk a little bit about the innovations you see there.
So I think in that example, it's like an open data initiative, right, where cities or governments are putting their data out there to solicit from the private sector solutions, right? Private sector, look, we'll crunch numbers all day long. We'll run scenarios all day long to help solve some of the hardest challenges. We live and breathe solving some of those challenges, but giving them access and insights and data to kind of create some of that is a good partnership, right? It's looking to your partners to innovate, use their technology, draw from other industries to help sort of build out infrastructure. Look, for example, retail. Retail is special in the sense that, they have got data down to, right, every movement that you're making, and they can make personalized recommendations to what you want to buy. That's the same kind of insight that we need to build infrastructure as well.
Do you have any examples of how particularly the retail stack could help influence or help city managers better manage their resources?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, retail tracks storefront footage as well as internet buy, right? So where should our warehouses be located? Which areas of our cities do we really need to enhance our sidewalks? Where can we add parks that will drive more traffic to that? I think it's all interconnected when we think about infrastructure as a service, less so than a physical asset.
A lot of the IRA money is pegged to climate goals, and managing energy is also key for most cities. Do you have any examples of how companies are using digital technologies to manage energy consumption and make their cities more efficient?
I think so, yeah. So I think whether it be energy, water, traffic, mobility, it's all about understanding that demand, right? When does it happen? Where does it happen? And it's about providing to that demand when it's needed, right? So if you think about our roads, for example, generally our road build out in America is built to about 4% congestion, right? So we are built to that 4% time of day that we've got traffic. The rest of the day, there isn't traffic. It's great. But it's also overbuilding, right? And we can find ways where we understand the demand to better, meet that demand and be a cost savings too.
What is it that distinguishes the cities that are sort of ahead of the curve and those that are behind the curve in terms of adopting these technologies? Because a lot of it is probably not built in-house. It needs to be acquired from the outside. But are there any differentiators between the winners and losers there?
I think there's a lot of technology out there. There's a lot of pilots out there. I think the challenge is long-term adoption, right? Creating business cases that have long-term returns. And in a lot of cities and states or countries that I've worked in, we look at ways to enable them to fund the entire journey, right? So in Europe, for example, data monetization is a huge opportunity for cities. Cities collect so much data, but we haven't really monetized it in a way that we can use it to fund other projects.
I think especially in Europe too, there's a lot of reluctance. They're very privacy conscious over there, different regulations. I think most people, when they hear about using data to sort of deliver city services, they worry about Big Brother, not realizing that Target and Amazon have way more information on you than your city council does. But do you think that's like a cultural shift that needs to happen? We need to allow cities to have more access to our information?
I think so. I think we're seeing generally more sort of participatory from stakeholders, right? Stakeholders wanting to put their information out there. There's a lot of crowdsource information that you could rely on. You almost don't have to collect any of this. It's all out there already.
And the other thing we keep coming back to is one of the things so fundamental, especially in the post-pandemic age, is transportation and people's commutes and how to shorten the commute. Everybody loves the city. No, everybody hates their commute. Are there any some innovations when it comes to making people's commutes shorter?
I think I saw with the Washington, D.C. Metro, they recently hired a chief customer experience officer, right? That, I think, is innovative, right? So they're not so much worried about, okay, well, the train's late, but the train's late. What time of day is it late? What kind of trips are late? Or it's concerned about, how people interact. So once they get off the train, where are they walking to, right? Are they getting in an Uber? Are they continuing to walk? How do they think about the entire experience of the traveler?
Yeah, I think one of the things, I think in Boston has really great integration between the public transport system and ride-sharing services. So that you can walk around the street and just see, you can make choices about how you're going to get from point A to point B in real time. And it's facilitated, had to be supported and built by the city.
I think you're right on there. It's about the choices, right? It's about offering all these choices, but also knowing when to offer them. And the consumers more and more used to, they expect that kind of on-demand customer service, whether it's a company or their city infrastructure. We talked about it, I think, a lot. That was part of a lot of themes in today's discussion, right? People want instant information. People want an instant response. They want to be instantly involved. I think there's a lot of that sort of real-time dimension that we have to think about when we build out our infrastructure now.
We talked earlier, I'm surprised that every city doesn't have an app of its own to report potholes and to be the point of interface between the city services and individual consumers. I just felt like it would have happened by now, and it hasn't. And you've got some ideas of why that hasn't taken off.
Well, I think also it's, first of all, you have to. It's a chain, right? So if you have that kind of platform, you have to have a way to respond to it. You have to have a way to engage people, right? There's a chain of education links that need to happen. So I think it's, to your point, a lot of involvement with stakeholders, right? Hearing what they want in terms of their services, hearing what they want in terms of new services, so we've really got to integrate when we think about planning.
Do you think that'll ever happen, or is it just a pie in the sky?
There's cities that do that. So London has an entire digital twin of their city where you can go in and put in all right, there's a pothole here, there's a traffic light out here.
And that feedback loop is really interesting. The reporting of potholes, which everybody complains about, but at the same time, cities can't afford to send out crews looking for potholes. So just cutting down the number of support calls and being able to geolocate these things makes a huge difference in response time and the effectiveness of city governments.
Now, there's a number of partners out there that have developed all sorts of technology. We're looking at one the other day where it's very interesting. They crowdsource data from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it, all these sorts of platforms where you can post things. And what they learned is that people are actually posting when they see accidents before they actually call 911. Because if I'm driving northbound and there's an accident southbound, I'm telling my friends about it. And they're able to take that data and dispatch it to EMS. And that average time, 32 seconds, is life-changing, right?
Yep.
It's pretty incredible. And that's all crowdsourced data.
Yeah, it's amazing. And Waze too, I report things when I'm driving on Waze all the time.
Yep. There you go, another form of crowdsourced.
And I think it was in Boston too. There are Boston people in the crowd, so I shouldn't be freelancing like this. But I think it was in Boston, there was a beta test of a pothole detection software. You didn't have to do anything. Your phone's accelerometer would detect when you hit the pothole. Once 20 or 30 people hit it, then they're like, no, this is really a pothole. and they were able to start filling them in. Like that automated aspect to it, I think is fascinating.
I mean, I am an avid participant on Waze. Deer, trash.
So what are you, having this breadth of all the different technologies that are available to cities now, is there anything that like you're particularly optimistic about or you're just really excited about rolling out?
I mean, I'm super excited about digital twins. We've done it with a number of clients to help them understand and see their assets better. Like you said, shortening the time frame that you can see something and interact with folks, the daily users. I think what I'm seeing around the world is, a number of roles for cities. One is, being that sort of startup ecosystem, right? Look at cities like Tel Aviv, London, or Silicon Valley, right? Being a place where there's open data initiatives, New York City, for example, Seoul, for example, being a place where there is a physical and a virtual collaboration space between the public and private sector to test ideas, right? So projects, ideas don't have to be massive, right? They can just be pilot. And I think it's the pilots that make a difference because that's how you form your policies. It's how you attract talent, how you attract investors. Then you slowly scale up, right? So it doesn't have to be the go big, go home all the time.
Amen to that. Pat, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Absolutely.